start with. And Ambani says that more seats, more wastage of public money in paying salaries, foreign trips, drinking holidays, free cars, houses, etc. Not a lot of confidence there with more seats. Eric Ojode says, how will having more women in political positions, or rather realizing two-thirds gender rule, change the lives of millions of Kenyans? We have Gishuru Nganga, who says, what have they done with the free 47 women rep seats to deserve more? Let them fight. They are not disabled. Okay, not very good comments there. But let me start with you, Catherine Waruguru, being the lady on the set today, by virtue of the fact that this is something that is enshrined in the Constitution. The Supreme Court of Kenya even made a pronouncement of it and gave a deadline, but still has not been met. What do you think has been the challenge so far?
Thank you so much. Number one, I want to appreciate Kenya as a leading democracy in Africa and as a country. And I must say, amongst the few faults which we would fault in the current constitution is certain parts of constitution which have not been enacted. And one of it is the two-third gender rule. And I want to come out clear and say this is not about women. It's about us as a country. It's about the image we portray to generations that we're in and generations to come and even the rest of the world. Number two is that you need to look at the trend in Africa, even countries which attained independence after Kenya, and countries who have not even benefited to enjoy an improved or a new breed of constitution like the one we have, the 2010 constitution. We are way backward and we are lagging backward. I'd like to give you an example of Rwanda. You just need to look at Rwanda, the cabinet, half of it is women. We have realized a new woman president, though a ceremonial president as they talk about, the Ethiopia president, and you look at Kenya where we are. This is not a conversation about women. It's a conversation about the society. It's a conversation around the sovereignty of the constitution, which we hold as a supreme law. If we are a house-breaking parliament, looking at the National Assembly, we cannot continue like this from the 11th parliament to the 12th parliament. The conversation is around inclusion. It's a conversation that will stop further discrimination against our women, our youth, and persons living with disability. It's a question around our preparedness as Kenya and even as Africa, embracing women and stop looking at our women as women who should just appear and vote.
All right.
And they do not participate in the democratic process. Looking
at the comments that have even just come through, and that's just a sample, there's a question there that has been asked, what have the women done even with the seats they have been given? Do you think that then as a society, hang on, do you think that then as a society that mind frame is changing?
Societal decisions will always be there, whether you're right or you're wrong in this country, and more so with the social media. People will always talk. But I've said, can we put aside feelings and discuss what is real and what is on the table? Is that there is a certain part of the constitution which we have not complied to, which is not enacted.
And there is a reason why it has not been complied.
Around bills, around even the electoral bodies. And by the way, Mike, do you know the electoral body committed or they violated the constitution, number one, by failing to push us as the members of parliament before we conducted the 2017 general election to make sure that this country complies to the two-third gender rule. And I also want to make this very clear, that an appointment of a cabinet secretary or any other appointee by the president and the nomination process and elected members of parliament like ourselves, there's no major difference in it because all of us have been called to the office of leadership and it is recognized in the constitution.
Okay.
So the concern is the 47 women has been on the front line to perform, and the question has always been like that of maize politics. We are underfunded, and that has been the problem. And with the little funds we have, women have been on the forefront performing, and we passed bills even in the 11th parliament, in the 12th parliament of the cancer bill, and women will continue.
Okay, we can sit here.
For cases of gender disparity, we must debate the question.
We can sit here and justify what the women have done so far, but the question...
And that is why I don't want to dwell on that. Yeah. They have our records. Every voter has a woman rep in the 47 counties. Because of gender disparity, I want us to avoid debating what members of parliament have done, because it is not all men governors and male senators and male members of parliament who have performed. Others, they have their shortcomings and weaknesses. But we must change this societal decision, which is so judgmental around women, and looking at women like, you ought to have done better than you have done. This is a conversation about us, about the society, as redeeming this country from the shame of failing to comply with the
Dr. Nyikal, do you think this same passion is going to be realized when the bill is placed before again today? Because it seems like for one reason or the other it has not gone through. Why do you think this has been the case?
Well, From the comments that came, which you read, it looks like a large number of people think it shouldn't be. But if I were to say, I were to take that to mean a large portion of the society, I would then respond like this. Sometimes leaders have to show the way. If always leaders just follow what the population want, then they cease to be leaders and they become followers of the population. So sometimes leaders need to steer the way. It is hoped that leaders have more vision, have more information, are steering in a certain direction. So they should. In that context, I would wish that this thing should pass today. And for what reasons? One, women are half the population of any society.
Right.
You cannot say you will exclude half your population from the activities of the nation. Then people will say, why don't they just come up and fight? But the truth is, the roles, the cultural roles, sometimes the social roles that are on women and the view of the society actually inhibit women from achieving what they would have achieved. For example, if you look at the cultures around ownership of property and land, that would inhibit men. If you look at the issue of child rearing and childbearing, that will inhibit women. And yet the women are not bearing and rearing child for themselves. They are doing it for the society.
For the society.
And further on, let me just say why I think this should happen. And we never should look at this issue as the war against men and women. Yes. That's a wrong thing. Yes. We want what can they do. Cultures have changed. The traditional roles have changed. There is technology. Women can now do a lot more. Allow me to pose you,
Dr. Nyikal, because I want to ask you the question. You are a member of parliament. This bill is not being placed for the first time today. Why has it not passed so far? Your argument is very good. It's very logical, but why hasn't it gone through so far?
Well, logical argument in politics is not always the arguments that will win the day. And so therefore, we cannot say, but because it has not passed, it should not pass. What has happened, it takes time for people to change their views. So I have always voted for this. And we are hoping that more of us will be convinced to see it the right way.
The reason I ask that question is, if it failed before, what stops it from failing again today?
Well, I can also ask, what stops it from going through today? But I wanted to put more issues on this. You see, I've told you the need to have all of us in nation building. I've told you that there are things that actually bar women from achieving, which are societal, and some of which the society gains from. Two, we have acceded to international conventions, the human rights, the Commission for the Status of Women, the Commission for Elimination of Discrimination, and above all, we have put it in our own constitution. It behoves us to go by our constitution or change it.
All right, I'll shortly cross over to Honorable Alice Wahome, but let me hear from Richard Onyonka. Honorable.
Are you with us today?
Mike, I want to say that the problem in Kenya is our politics. The reason why this bill did not pass, the two times we tried it from 2010, I think it was brought to the floor 2012 or 13, around 13. There. It's simply because at that time, everybody in our political establishment, the leadership, had wanted to claim credit. As a result, the other side, whether if we were like, I was in the opposition, even when many of us had wanted the bill to pass, there were actually many of us who were saying, "Hiyo kitu tutaiua until further notice." What has changed now is really our politics of handshake.
Yes, yes.
Where you are is that you have all the political leaders actually now coming
reading
out
from the same script.
Speaking one language.
Exactly. You have the president, his deputy, you have the Prime Minister Raila, you have Kalonzo Musyoka, you have Musalia, you have Weta. All of them are saying, let's fix this thing about the two-third gender rule. I think that is what has changed. The second issue that had existed before, the truth is, men have, we've felt in Parliament, and we talk to our colleagues have always sometimes felt vulnerable, that if you increase this number, there's a possibility that it's easy for women then to railroad certain laws and certain regulations which are basically supposed to be tailor-made to control and manage our behavior either as legislators or as individuals who belong to the male gender. Somehow, our women have now ended up convincing most of us in Parliament that it behoves of us, like Dr. Nyikala said, to be reasonable and intelligent about what is simple.
Yes.
Women are half the population.
Yes.
We can't argue why are they not going to be able to vote for themselves after all, because they're a majority. Women have got roles of bringing up children, of managing the home, and all that, and of course the cultural issues.
Thank you.
So where we are now, I think, to a large extent, if we had the numbers in the House, this will pass today. The only hope I have is that many of the numbers will actually...
And we'll come to the question of numbers, because then does it mean that the legislators do not think that this is important? Why would such an important thing that has forestalled so many times not raise numbers to a point where you're even concerned? But allow me to bring in Honorable Alice Wahome, the Member of Parliament for Kandara, who's joining us from our INM studio in town. And your opening remarks on this, Honorable Alice Wahome, I know you've been on the forefront of, basically getting even the public to participate. What have you found from the public? What can you report in regards to public participation in regards to the two-thirds gender bill?
Okay, I think, thank you very much for having me here in the studio. I want to first applaud the panel that you have. They've made very good opening statements. Let me say that the public, we can first remember or remind the public that this is not coming for discussion this particular time only. We had the constitution-making process where all Kenyans participated and actually agreed to have the necessary provisions, Articles 27 and Articles 81 of the Constitution in the 2010 Constitution. And it's because that now the Parliament is the one that has the mandate and the responsibility to actually ensure that we get the right mechanism within the Constitution. At the making of the Constitution, while in Naivasha, things changed slightly, and therefore we did not have the right mechanism as it was put in Article 177 that enables the county assemblies to be compliant with the gender principle in Article 81 and Article 27. Remember, Article 27 is actually a Bill of Rights article. The public, during the public participation, and I sit in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee that is had processing this bill for purposes of the floor and as the vice chair. When we went for public participation in June and July, the support for this bill was overwhelming because, of course, we do record, we have the Hansard with us, the audio, we have overwhelming support from the public. Of course, you will find maybe the social media, there is some people trying to sway debate, but can we remember as a country that it is not really the problem of the women. It's not a women issue, and Nyikal has pointed out, it's a gender matter, that the country said you have one team, men and women, female and men, and therefore we must move all of us together. And other countries elsewhere, and Catherine Waloworo has done very well in pointing out that, have achieved where we have not been able to achieve. Our members of parliament are expected this afternoon to debate this bill, the second reading. And we expect that after the second reading, then the debate will be lively, will be sober, and will address the need to ensure that we give Kenyans what they worked for so hard. And when we look at, when we want to see it as a women affair, then we reduce the debate to, to a lesser principle, inclusivity, integrity, accountability, and we have, as women, as Kewopa, held the torch, but we have placed it squarely on the floor of Parliament, and of course we have involved all political party leadership because we recognize and agree that their role and participation is very critical to ensure that we get the right numbers, and the numbers are 233.
All right, thank you.
Michael.
All right, and let me come back to us here, and I'll start with you, Kate. And of course, Kenya and Africa generally is a very patriarchal society, and that may be one that Dr. Nyikal has alluded to the fact that there's a question of culture that plays into this. But even as we try and fix parliament, are we really doing much? Because let me start just with your political parties, all of you, and I'll start with you, Catherine Waruguru. When you look at the top, we don't see women representation. The leader of the party, the deputy, the secretary general, in basically all your parties, including Dr. Nyikal, ODM, there is no women leadership. I mean, do we need to start fixing things from that level? Because we're looking at women coming onto a plane where they will play on a level playing field with men.
Right. I want to believe that starting with the president and even the Right Honorable Amolo Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, and all the political parties' leadership, they love women and they appreciate the role of a woman in the society. And I want us to look at what even this country has binded itself to, like the UN around the gender principle and the commitments of this country in the international community. It has been compelling, moving even beyond the political parties' manifestos. I want to agree that we have one more chance, which is today, which I feel so much excited and thrilled, because we have an opportunity as a country to redeem ourselves from what has been holding us back. We have become a laughing stock because we don't walk the talk. Our commitment in my political party, which is Jubilee, around women has been hampered towards the real implementation because of such things as the Constitution. If there's always a loophole to run away from the reality and implementing what is correct, then you'll always find there's a problem. And let me say this. I want to agree with the Kenyan members of parliament who sat in the 10th parliament and 11th parliament, that back then it was not time to do exactly what we ought to do, we ought to have done. And we have an opportunity to do so. I'm saying that because we must enjoy the handshake, like the Honorable Nyenka has said, and we must make sure we maximize it. And maximizing it is making sure collectively, even before we get the report from the Bridging Bridges Initiative, that we have moved forward. We have an opportunity as this country to correct all the messes, starting with the gender principle, the electoral process, the judiciary, the parliament itself, and even going down to mashinani, to make sure that anything which would lead to harbor inclusivity, anything which would lead to discrimination, tribalism, nepotism, and mention anything which has been bringing division in this country comes to a stop. Okay. And for that case, I would ask, the Honorable Nyanka and the Honorable Nyikal have come out strongly and open to say, I'm in support of the 2-Third Gender Bill. We will continue asking Kenyans, our sons and daughters, and even other stakeholders, to come out strongly and not to shy off from saying, I'm in support of our women. Because these women, you cannot purport to be on the right track record of development when you have half of the stakeholders outside the playing field. We need to bring on board our women. We need to bring our women without talking about cost implication and without further diverting real issues to talk about salaries and bloated wages and all this manner of things, because the 50% number of our women, they are taxpayers. They have not been put in the game for a long time. All right. It is time to make sure that they are put on board and that they enjoy without any condition and any caveat. They enjoy what it should be in the Constitution. All right.
Honorable Nyonka, apart from your concern regarding quorum, yes, this afternoon when this is going to be put before the House, what other thing stops us as Kenyans? And what do you tell Kenyans? Because we'll call you back here. We hope that it's going to pass. If it does not, we'll still call back you here and ask you what happened.
I know we have your vote, Mike.
I think
we have your vote.
Mike, I want to say this. I think what has changed now is the mood.
The handshake.
I'm not sure it is, okay, you can call it the handshake. I think the mood in the House right now is that members of Parliament have realized that there are certain things which we must right. There are things which we've been ignoring and pushing them under the rug. I believe, and there's going to be a lot of cascading taking place. I'll give you an example. Constitutionally, it says that 30% of all individuals employed within any government sector, government department, county governments and all that. And we've been hiding that under the rug. There was a reason deliberately why those clauses were actually inserted into the Constitution. The reason is these are the tenets, these are the benchmarks of good governance. if you come to Kisii County and you are actually a member of, you are an officer who works there, and you come from the Mount Kenya region, and somebody else comes from Kwale, you make a Kenya that is richer, a Kenya that is more inclusive. You learn things from each other, and the country moves forward. We in Parliament now have actually realized that we become a better country when we are much more accommodative to our mothers, our sisters, and our daughters. Right. That we are much more realistic. And I can say right now we are becoming much more practical, and we have reached a stage where we are saying we want our country to have the gender rule implemented, because you can imagine a small country like Rwanda have already achieved the two-thirds gender rule. Yeah. And yet Kenya is the one who has been writing the policy papers, holding seminars for them, training trainers, consulting for them. Yes, yes. And yet here we are, 10 years after the Constitution, some 13, I think 14 years after the Constitution.
And I think Kenyans would squarely blame members of Parliament. I mean, like
no, as I said,
forget about the press.
Mike, there are times when human beings, whether they are intelligent or not, they have certain fears. In Parliament, many of my colleagues have been fearing that what is actually going to happen with our women representatives if we increase the number in Parliament. And the reality is that I don't think there's much that would really happen if we increase the number. For me, I think the Parliament becomes much richer. If the women fail on the nominations, then there's a likelihood, if they do not perform, just like everybody out here in our country is talking right now. Madam Honorable Waruguru, the standard of Kenyans, the standard which Kenyans are holding you as women rep is so high, because the expectations of the public are that this was a seat which was introduced for women to show what their capacity and capabilities are. So if you fail, it is you who would have failed the women, not the men. Yes. And for us, we are saying, let us give it to them, and we'll wait and see how they're going to do. Secondly, I think the other important thing about this bill is that the sunset clause that my brother Duale was talking about was so important, that let us allow women phase this out after the next 20 years. That is reasonable to very many members of Parliament. Right. That we are going to allow our women and our sisters to come in and run for political, be nominated as they are learning what it is to be elected. And the truth is, Mike, to win an election is not easy. It's not easy. The women who have actually been elected should be highly recommended.
And I'd like us to even look at the fact that this bill passes that does not necessarily fix the situation instantly, but it's a good starting point. And we do know that the president and the deputy president have been on the forefront of ensuring that they marshal all their followers to have this bill passed. Let's just listen in to what they had to say before we have Honorable Alice Wahome also comment.
Parliament this week, we will be making the historic decision to eliminate the discrimination against women. They are loyal, they are dependable, they are reliable, but they haven't had their fair share of leadership in our country. Our Parliament is being asked to return a hand to our daughters, to our wives, and to our mothers by giving them a chance.
Ningependa kusi haswa viongozi wetu wa National Assembly. Najua wengine wanasema hii sijui itaongeza gharama, itafanya namna hii. Lakini ule mswada ulikuwa hapo awali umebadilishwa sasa. Na vile viti ambavyo tumeweka zimepunguka kulingana sasa na vile katiba yetu imetueleza. Na ningewasihi kwa heshima, ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba kama taifa la Kenya, we have heeded to what our constitution has said. Pitisheni huo mswada. Na ndio yale ambaye tunatenda inalingana na katiba yetu. Kwa hivyo mimi ningewaomba wenzetu, haswa wajumbe, tafadhali tupitishe huu mswada, na ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba sheria zetu zinalingana na katiba yetu vile imesema.
All right, and that's what the president, the deputy president had to say. But we'd like now to cross over to Alice Wahome, who is at our INM studio. And Mheshimiwa, let's be positive and say this bill is going to pass. Looking at the representation we even have here, everybody is in support of it. And let's assume that it passes. But that's not going to fix everything in terms of giving women a level playing field, politically speaking. There are quite a number of issues that come up. For instance, the availability to resources. How do we fix this over time? The president has also mentioned, and Duale I think also mentioned in that this is an opening, but over years, then we give them a level playing field where now everybody is equal, and with time, they can now just have elective positions. What challenges do we foresee, and how do we make it a level playing field for women?
Okay, you know, Michael, we have very good examples in Parliament as we speak now, because if we can start with the deputy whip, chief whip in the House. The deputy whip is Cecily Barire. She started as a nominated member of Parliament in I think the 9th or 8th Parliament. And now she has been able to seek a competitive position, and she has been elected twice in Runyenjes. Twice in Runyenjes. Then we have right now this Parliament, we have Sarah Korere, MP for Laikipia, I believe, North. You remember she was nominated in the last Parliament, the 11th Parliament, and now she has been elected. We have somebody like Honorable Suda, again nominated, but now is the member of Parliament in Saburu. And these examples are many. We are saying that if you look at somebody like Catherine Waruguru, seated next to you, Catherine has come on board as an affirmative action seat from the 47. And we believe that soon Catherine would be even thinking about moving forward from the 47 seat from the affirmative action. There is a lot that needs to be done. But I want to again remind the country and the viewers that the responsibility of ensuring that women are on board in this country is the responsibility of the state. It's all of us are required to make some input. But the state under Article 27 has been mandated, obligated to come up with a policy, measures that will ensure that women are empowered, both economically, socially, and politically. Then what does that mean? It means we have to make the environment friendly and easy. We have to ensure that there is sufficient funding for some of the programs that will bring women on board in the correct measure, in the correct numbers. We have to ensure that even in our private offices, that women are given space on a fair play. And because when we are saying that you have a team of a corporation or a team of 11, for example, Obama spoke about a team of football or soccer players. But I want to reduce it back to, bring it back to an office, a corporation with about maybe 20 people, workers. And then you want to use only 10. What does that do? It means that you have 10 who are not participating and who are not there. Then you are losing resources. Then you look at a family. In a family setup, if you cannot say you have a family completely if you don't have all the people. You have children, you are leaving out the children, or you are leaving out the wife, or you are leaving out key members of that family, whichever setup the family is. So, Michael, we have to change attitude. We have to support the programs and policies that will give women a starting point. Okay. And of course, the government has done well in the area of funding. We have the Women Enterprise Fund. That is a fund that is also going up to the grassroots. And I had this question of, and it keeps on coming up, what have the women in Parliament done? I think we're using a different yardstick to measure women work in Parliament. Can we use the same yardstick? Let us ask the same question. From the 290 constituencies, we are 23 women only. And then, of course, then the balance are men. Let us not ask what have women done. Let us ask what has Parliament done. And you know, to even perform in Parliament, you need also a fair space. And women don't easily get fair space even on the floor of the House. Okay. So and most of them are one-timer. Yeah.
All right. I'll come back to you. Let me come to you, Dr. Nyikal. And a fair space is a good place to go now on this. And in regards to political parties, I brought this up before, but when we even look at our political parties, do you think that they, first of all, realize gender parity? When we look at the leadership, there's very few political parties that actually have women in leadership.
Well, I mean, that statement is true because it is born out of facts. But remember, in ODM, our Secretary General is a woman. So at least that...
Edwin Sifuna? Edwin Sifuna is the Secretary General.
Okay, so that has changed. The former Zani was a woman. Now, that showed our direction. But the fact that the parties themselves have not achieved it, it's a bigger reason than to go to the bigger law. And so that if you want things to change, you must, at the highest level, make that change clear. Therefore, if we change the constitution, it will not solve everything now, but it will now, it will be a starting point. All the other institutions can now be put to task and asked, have you achieved this? And actually in this country, there is a Department of Gender who is actually to give annually or every 2 years gender data indicating where are women in all institutions and in all areas of activities. So we must start with this so that we can follow. But there's one thing that has not come out. We keep looking at this as women instead of looking at gender. People are not seeing far into the future and saying it may come a time when actually this will support men. There are other societies where actually now you are thinking, women have.
They have more numbers.
Look at the girl-child issue. We have moved to a situation where now we are saying now the girls and the boys are competing equally. I don't even want us to say the girls and boys. Our children are competing. So now if we start getting a situation where we are saying we need to do something about boys, already we will have a law that does that. But as you said about parties, sure, as I said, our former Secretary General was actually a woman. That to us was a great
indication of the way that it's going. Yes. Honorable Onyonka, do you see also parties, buying into this and ensuring that it is done? It is not just about saying, it is doing. We need to see this being done even at a political party level because, for instance, when we talk about resources, one of the things that limits and inhibits women from being able to participate equally is the question of resources.
Right. Mike, I would like to tell you that, again, in Kenya, what we do normally is we either say things for political expediency or we do things for the spur of the moment. The truth is, if this bill passes, then everything is going to be cascaded. I can tell you right now, if you go and hold, I'm sure my colleagues will testify to this, if you decide to go and hold a football tournament at the village level for young people, now we have ladies teams and we have young boys teams. The law actually requires that the money you're going to spend for holding that tournament must be shared with both genders. If you look at what our leaders are doing at the party level, I don't want to criticize our leadership, but we have to now begin to understand that where we are headed as a country is that whatever we are going to do, including our corporations, private companies, if you're going to do interviews and you want to actually have the best recruited, you cannot use gender as an issue now. And because somebody's going to take you to court. You'd say we were 9 individuals. I was actually amongst the top 3. And yet you are recruiting a certain number, and what you are doing now is discriminating against me because you think at some point I might go on maternity leave, therefore I'm going to take time from the company, and therefore my performance will be affected. That kind of stuff that is old school. What is happening right now is that Kenyans need to start preparing and thinking that there are some things we have to start doing right. We have to make sure that we are fair, that we have equity, that we must accommodate each other, that we are, even when we are accommodating our women now, which is actually constitutional, that we must now begin again to start accommodating each other at the tribal level. You remember our issues about tribe and stuff like that, so that we can have a country where we are moving in the right direction, we are moving together as a team, whereby all individuals in this country feel that they are actually included. Yes.
All right, and I'll need your closing comments because of time. Let me start with you, Kate Waruguru, your closing comments on this.
Well, thank you. I just want to appeal to the members of the public and more so to my colleagues in the National Assembly that this afternoon you show up in large numbers. We require more than 233 members of parliament so that finally we pass this bill. I think this is our third attempt and our third trial. I want to believe that Jesus Christ, if I would quote the good Bible, was denied by 1 Peter 1, 2, 3. At that time, we acknowledged that this indeed was the Savior and the Master. I want to call upon our colleagues, you know, even ladies. There are some ladies who may also not be very convinced that this is not about us as women, it's about us growing together as Kenyans. It's about us putting Kenya on the map, that we are equal to task and that we are compliant with the gender principle and that we do not shy off. It is time also for our colleagues to show up, to tell their constituents that they are not intimidated by women and they're not even insecure. And those more issues which could be holding them back from supporting this bill are neither here nor there because they are not based on the Constitution. I must say a big thank you to the President, His Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, for coming out strong in support of the two-third gender rule. His Excellency the Deputy President William Ruto for telling us to come and put to a stop this gender discrimination, and also the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, and everybody else, Aden Duale, and the leadership of the House for acknowledging and accepting that this afternoon we are making rich history in this country, agreeing that not about female and male, it's about gender. Gender parity must be achieved at all costs.
Dr. Nyikali, your closing comments.
We really must bring our society into a situation where it is in reality with the changes that are going on technologically and socially. And we must see this as a gender issue and not as a women issue. And that is really the overall, so that we have a clear basis on which all other areas of our life can now be put to task. And therefore, I'll call upon my colleagues that we must have time to do this. Let me tell you something. Even animals, even insects, change in response to the society. If you have mosquitoes and you bring an insecticide that kills them, after time, their biology will change so that cannot see them. We must change our society in line with what is happening technologically and socially.
All right, let me finish with you also, Honorable Richard Onyonka, your closing comments.
For me, I'll usually, Mike, I never want to give Honorable Duale credit for doing a good job because he's always roughshoding us in Parliament in the opposition. I want to really thank him though for having come out to this, and most probably his wife must have had a nudge as he was trying to look at this document. I think I want to persuade my colleagues in Parliament that this is a good document. It has a sunset clause. We are going to pass it in the next 20 years. The women would have taken off. And I think let us try and show that as a country we can move together and make Kenya a better place than we found it.
All right, Honorable Alice Wahome, who is at our City Center studio, you have the last word on this today.
Thank you very much. I want to call upon all the members of Parliament, the 349, to come out this last one time to support this bill. We have had a conversation that has been taken forward, and the lead movers have been the members of Parliament from Kewopa, led by Purity Grishi. I want to thank them for the continued support. They have gone round to visiting all the offices that needed to be sought for purposes of support. His Excellency the President, you have heard him over the weekend supporting His Excellency the Deputy President, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, Amani Party Leader Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka. We even have also sent other delegations to Honorable Wetangula, all political party leadership. We want to ask them to go further and help us to bring in the numbers. 233 are required. Then the leader of majority and the speaker are on board, because although the speaker doesn't have a vote, we will want to ask him to encourage a sober debate that will bring out the necessary issues that the public need to hear about this debate. Let us make this happen for the country, for gender equality,
Thank
for
you.
inclusivity, for equity, for fairness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Alice Wahome. Now, the 233 members of parliament, the honors are on you. Are you going to do what's right? Only time will tell. The clock is ticking. And right here on KTN News,